I am super excited to be joining you all at the Product Management Summit 2020. Yeah, I just a bit of background around on me. I've got about 15 years in counting in the world of product. Like a lot of folks who've been doing this for a while. I was doing product before product really became a thing and took off in the software industry. Sort of just jack of all trades, master of none, trying to find my way into the world. And the last 10 years have been spent sort of in sort of management and leadership roles. The last 5 years have really been spent sort of at that executive level, really leading product departments sort of for various companies. Super excited to be talking to you guys today. I'm going to be talking about what it means to be a product leader. Okay, so brief introduction. You've just stepped into your first role in product leadership. Congratulations, monumental step. What are the things you need to know? Really, three key ideas that I want to leave with you guys. I want to really present to you guys today during this talk are as follows. First one, you've got to learn to let go. You cannot do everything yourself, and it would be foolish to even try. The second one, how do you really approach your role as a product leader in being almost a portfolio product manager of product managers, right? The same way when you're a product manager, you were managing products. As a product leader, you're managing people who manage products. How do you employ some of the same parallel tactics when you're thinking about how you lead people who manage products? Thirdly, this phrase I like to use, different strokes for different folks. Basically, sort of the thing you need to understand and appreciate here, different people have different experiences. They have different backgrounds. They have different upbringings. They have different perceptions. They have different, sort of desires and intentions, and they have different opportunities and objectives that they want to pursue. How do you make sure that you custom tailor your mentorship and your coaching and your leadership style for each of these, inherently unique individuals on your team, right? What does that look like? So those are the three key ideas. We'll dive into each one further. Let's start with the first one, learning to let go. And just a quick credit to my daughter for suggesting I use this image for all of you today. Evelyn, thank you. Really, what are we talking about here? I want you to think about when you were a product manager. Think about how busy you were doing your own job. All the myriad of things you had to do as a PM in an organization. You had to solicit feedback from all different types of stakeholder groups within the organization, everybody from sales to marketing to customer support to the executive team. All sorts of folks. You had to make sure that you were in constant contact with customers as well, really conducting customer interviews and really to, understand, to really hear what they were saying, but then also to be able to read between the lines of what they were saying and really truly understand, what their pain points were and how you might go about solving them. Once you've articulated all that, once you've captured all that, thinking about the times you needed to spend with design and engineering in order to understand, that you were building the right types of workflows to solve for the problems that your customers and users had. Not an easy job that I'm sure sort of many of you are either still in today or fondly remember because it was not that long ago that you were doing that sort of day in, day out as a PM. Again, just appreciate how busy you were, right? Now think about for those of you that have been promoted, why you were promoted to lead the team. Odds are you probably did a pretty decent job, and sort of you've been asked to step up to the plate and take that next level and say, hey, sort of can you help drive the team at large to greater heights and to more execution, right? The point I want to make here, folks, is that you cannot and you should not try to do it all yourself. To do so would be absolutely foolish. You cannot, sort of even attempt to think about how you might tackle all these things to try to watch every single person on your team and, to make sure that they're doing the things that they need to be doing, but also the things that they're not doing. You're either, covering off by doing yourself or, you're explicitly telling them step by step how to do. that's just a recipe for disaster, failure, and just tremendous amount of overwork on your part. And sort of we just, none of us have the time to be able to deal with that. Whether you've been in product a long time or a short time, whether you can draw upon examples in your product career or in your career before product. Think back to those types of micromanagers that you might have had, and how enjoyable was it for you as somebody who had to report into a micromanager, right? I think sort of, the key point I want to make here, when you're a leader in product, it becomes very easy to want to slip in to that mindset of being a bit of a micromanager, a bit of a person who's, got their eye on every single detail. It doesn't work well for anybody. Think to what the true objective of leadership really is, and I would argue it's one of, do you have the ability, do you have the wherewithal to be able to drive your team to execute at, and hopefully even beyond, with time, the level that you've been able to execute yourself. And really, I would argue, this is why most people get promoted into leadership positions, because they're viewed as having a pretty solid track record of execution and delivery as an individual contributor, and they've been sort of ordained by the powers that be, so to speak. They've been sort of given the challenge of, okay, we know you can do this yourself. Do you have the ability to influence other folks who will collectively report into you to execute at or close to the same level, and hopefully get to beyond that level that you're used to by yourself? Let's move on to the second point. Really, the point here is being a portfolio PM of PMs, right? You move from being a product manager of an individual or a couple products to suddenly a manager of product managers. How do you treat each PM like their own product, and understand sort of the unique needs? No two products are the same. We all know this. In turn, the equal parallel there is that no two product managers are the same as well. How do you take a bit of a portfolio management from your PM? How do you realize that sort of, Jack may need a little certain, support in one particular area, whereas Jill may need different kind of support in a different kind of area? And how do you recognize those nuances and those differences amongst the members of your team? And how do you really apply the right type of leadership and management support in order to get the most out of each of the individuals? I want you to think about this notion of T-shaped skill sets. I really want you to hang on to that. Some of you may be familiar with this. Some of you may not. Those of you who are not, I absolutely encourage you, feel free to go online and read up more about it. Really, the concept that I think I want you guys to understand here is one of thinking about a breadth of skills. Now think about the types of skills you would need in a product team. Right? There are many. Think about those that matter to you and your team. Looking at each individual on your team. Each individual will possess a unique sort of breadth of skills, a unique number of skills, and within each skill, they may possess a certain depth. Right? The notion of the T shape is to really understand sort of each individual, sort of what the shape of their T looks like. They will be broad to a certain extent across an array of skills, and they will be deep across, those same skills to a certain extent. Right? So each T is unique to the individual. What does that look like? How do you have an accounting for that? How are you able to take stock of that in terms of what those T shapes with respect to the skills look like on your team? Appreciate that, with different shaped T's on your team, there are correspondingly and subsequently different requirements in terms of the type of management support you want to be able to provide. All this to say, the last bullet point there, one size absolutely does not cut it. This notion of one size fits all does not cut it when you're talking about managing your product team. Let's talk about the third point here, and it's really one, again, folks, of different strokes for different folks, right? What are we talking about here? You lead a team of different PMs that run different products. The experience and responsibility may vary from team member to team member. So you may have, Bill, who is 2 years fresh out of school, and he's an associate or a junior product manager, wide-eyed and bushy-tailed, super enthusiastic. He's always willing to learn, and he wants to soak everything up like a sponge, but not that much by way of already existing know-how, right? Then you may have somebody like Karen, who is a 25-year veteran in the industry, been a product manager for 15 of those years, really seen it and done it all, right? And sort of they really understand the ins and outs, the finer nuances. They're often the oracle. They're the person that everybody goes to in terms of, we don't know this. What does this look like? Well, let's go ask Karen. She's been around so long, she knows everything. Two very different profiles, two very different sort of experiences, two very different personalities. You've got to be able to appreciate that and acknowledge that as the leader, and you've got to be able to apply a unique management style and support style accordingly. The key point I want you to understand here is, really understand, with respect to each person on your team, what the current shape of their T looks like, and also what the future shape of their T looks like. I think it's important for product leaders to be having regular one-on-one conversations with their direct reports to really understand where they want to go, right? And to make sure that, there's a good intersection between where they want to go, the skills that they want to develop, also being the skills that you need on your product team, right? If you can get that intersection, then sort of you do everything you can to nurture that development within that individual. Recognize that the degrees of variability in your team will exist, and have the ability to adjust your leadership and management style and approach accordingly. Conclusion, final thoughts here. Let's wrap up this conversation. Let it go. You cannot do everything yourself, nor should you even attempt to try. Leadership is about coaching and mentoring your team to deliver more than one person can do on their own. Understand your T-shape, yours as the leader, and also the T-shape of each member on your team, the current shape of that T, as well as the future shape of what those T's should look like. Really, you want to collect the varying T's in order to make a box. This is where the magic all comes together for you as the product leader. Once you get a chance to take stock of everybody's individual T-shape, then you get a chance to overlay all of those T's on top of each other to get the entire team's view. Then you'll be able to understand the breadth, the collective aggregate breadth of skills that you possess against what you feel is needed for the team, and then the corresponding depth of each skill set as well. And again, sort of what you feel is needed. Perhaps, the notion of customer interviews is a skill set that perhaps the team as an aggregate doesn't possess to a great depth, but that's something that you've all recognized as something we need to get better at. We absolutely need that in spades. Data and analytics, I'm going against the grain here, but perhaps for whatever reason, that's not as deep a skill that you perhaps need. You can afford to let go in that area. The point I want to make here is, every organization is unique. Every context is unique. Understand what your organizational context is. Understand the needs that your organization has of their product team. That would be, sort of the group that you lead. Understand that. Really get a good lay of the land of that first. Understand the skills that are required. Then begin to take stock of the skills that you possess on your team, including yourself. Overlay that all together, you'll quickly be able to understand where you have surplus, where you have deficit. The areas where you have deficit become really easily identified opportunities in terms of skills and things that you want to look for in new individuals that look to join the team. So as you seek to grow your team, as you seek to secure the headcount after budget season, and you look to be able to say, hey, look, we get the ability to hire another product manager, you understand based on that overlay, this is the type of skills we need, and we need them to this depth with respect to that product manager, right? Just a graphical depiction there. Again, overlaying all of everybody's individual T's, you should get sort of that overarching view of what the team skill set looks like, right? Of both the breadth and the depth. the point I want to make here is it's incumbent upon you as the leader to be striving for this ability to take every single individual T, overlay them on top of each other, and get a full solid box, right? I think that should be your goal. That should be your objective. That's what you should be striving for as the leader of the product team. Remember, last point, leadership is more than just a final destination. You should appreciate the journey and the inevitable sort of countless detours and sidetracks that will come as you traverse that journey. Last thing I want to share with you guys, I actually run a podcast on product management. It's called Epics and Stories. It's a podcast dedicated to tales and adventures in product management. If you liked what you heard today in terms of the talk, I would encourage you to check out episode 3 in the first season. We are in the first season. It's a deeper dive into making the move into leadership in product management. It's available right on the link that you see there. Or you can also get it on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Finally, you can follow the podcast social media channels on Twitter at Epics and Stories and on Instagram at Epics and Stories as well. That's it. I hope you learned a thing or two. Thank you for taking the time to listen to my talk. Feel free to reach out through any of those channels. I wish you the best.